Sensitivity is intelligence. With grace and skill, you have abundance. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. Host Kelly Brickle is a psychic medium healer, numerologist, and teacher. Her passions are learning about the soul and energy. Whether it's through spirit, emotion, or vibrational numbers, there's always a pathway of information waiting to help. Now, here is your host of the Psychic Hour, Kelly Brickle.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Monday episode of the Psychic Hour. We'll be having Cindy Kaza with us today, which is awesome. And we're going to be diving in a little bit to the topic of surrendering before we begin. So I hope everyone's having a fresh start to their week, that the energy is good for them. We had the full moon the last couple of days, and my goodness, the full moon is always interesting energy. Some people are really sensitive to the full moon, especially if they're energy sensitive. And some full moons are more intense than others. And I feel like, you know, over the last couple of days, that full moon energy was a little bit more intense than average, but that's just me. So it's always kind of like nice to talk about that with your energy sensitive friends. How's that moon working for you, right? Do you feel more emotional? Do you feel like high on a wire? Some people can't sleep very well during the full moon. Some people are just getting more hits, right? With how they feel about others, just way more attuned on certain levels, or like really like high on the wire. So like nervous energy is very common around that time. So yep, it was a weird one, but it's kind of like evened out. So it's like, okay. I want to talk about surrendering, for a little bit. And I think it's such an important topic. It's a topic that comes up so much within spirituality, so much within psychic mediumship development, unfoldment, and really it can go so many different ways with what it means. It's really at its core, seeing yourself and allowing for yourself, feeling yourself, knowing yourself without judgment, and just letting things be. Same with others, surrendering to the situation, surrendering to what's around you, what's inside of you, being neutral, right? Just observing and going, oh, that's what's going on. Okay. All right. I kind of thought it was this, kind of thought it was that. But if I quiet myself and observe, it's more like this. And that takes time to unravel. That takes time to unfold. That's why that word unfoldment is usually used, because there's layers peeled back. What you thought 5 years ago is going to be different when you're in the present and 10 years down the line. You know, we change. Sometimes other people change us. Sometimes we change ourselves. Within spirituality, we change by surrendering, we change by observation. And it really is a journey for the truth. It's a journey to find answers. Do we always have to have an answer? No, but if we do the work, the answer usually comes and finds us. Not maybe the one we were particularly looking for, but an answer does find us. And it gives us one more step into the direction we were going of, in the vibration of what does this all lead to. So I want to offer just the question for yourself. How have you been surrendering it within your own spirituality? There's so many different things that we can do. Traditionally within mediumship, you know, we sit in the power, or we meditate, and we put ourselves in an environment where we can have spirit come to us. And in the beginning stages, we kind of wonder if it's even working. We wonder if, you know, who's around. Is it loved ones? Is it our guides? Is it our team? We wonder who, you know, is in our presence. And sometimes it's a scary thing too. I think when we're first learning about energy, we're learning about, you know, good and bad energy and the concepts of good and evil. And my goodness, that is something that will persist along the journey. We go, oh, what are these fundamental concepts of what make up what drive people, like the universe, right? But it all starts within our first days too. We're like, who am I connecting to? What am I connecting to? And you have to have some type of surrender to feel something new that you've never experienced before. But you have to have also some type of surrender to actually understand and know what's happening and not just your fear set in. Your fear of stopping yourself from feeling and experiencing, and your fear of stopping yourself from actually communicating with the soul that is around you. And that could be on a psychic level as well. You know, sometimes we're meeting somebody, right? And it could just be out and about, or, you know, maybe we're helping them with something. And we have these preconceived notions of, oh my gosh, maybe they won't like us. Maybe they don't want to talk to us. Maybe they're having a bad day. And psychically, maybe there is some of that. But that is not the entirety of that person's soul that you are communicating with, meeting the moment with, and to really see the truth of the person beyond just who they are in that moment or who they are in the day. I promise you, you can connect to them if you surrender your expectations, your observations on just that surface level, and just observe deeper and deeper. And we're constantly taking breaths through our surrenders, because everything I'm talking about, it really meets a head when you get into the energy of fear, okay? Whether you are, let's say, performing in front of people with whatever you're doing, let's say you're a platform medium, let's say you're doing a one-on-one session, or let's just say you are, you know, tuning into the environment of the situation with a friend or family member. There's going to be sometimes things where you're like, I don't know if I should be saying this. I don't know if I should be doing this. And that feeling comes mixed within, you need to speak up. You need to do this, right? That surrendering is allowing yourself to hear something deeper, see something deeper, feel something deeper than your own fear. So sometimes, yeah, we're just going to be picking up on things and our mind's going to be like, maybe that's not exactly the route, right? Maybe that's not exactly what I'd like to do in this moment. And that's fine. We all have choice. We all have free will. And sometimes your intuition is right on with the situation. Just because you pick it up doesn't mean you have to share it. Just because you've seen it once doesn't mean you have to become it, right? And go down the rabbit hole. But if you observe something and deep within your core, you feel like you need to say something or you need to do something and you need to meet the moment, surrender. You'd be surprised what happens. And that's what it's all about. Okay? So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with Cindy and we're going to talk away and you're going to learn about her life. So see you in a few. Looking forward to it. Everybody, welcome back. We are introducing medium Cindy Kaza to the show. Cindy has been intuitive. Hey,
Hey, what's up, Kelly?
Going well. How about you, Cindy?
Good.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to introduce you. I want to preface your awesomeness. Welcome.
Okay. Thanks.
So you know this about yourself, but everyone, please, yes, Cindy has been intuitive since she was young. She found herself in training and developing her gifts with the pull. She actively works and tours as a platform medium, paranormal investigator, and teacher. And you can find her on the Travel Channel within shows such as the Holzer Files and Shock Docs. Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. Hey.
Got to give credit where credit's due. So How do you find yourself today? What is your latest inspiration? Because I mean, I look, about your journey and you're always like pulled to something. I go, wow, she's doing that now. What do you find yourself coming into within this year, within your spiritual development, within your mediumship? I'm going to dive right into this moment.
Gosh, I mean, so many things, right? I think the last couple of years have really been like years of diving internally and personal growth and like working through my own stuff. And in that journey, it's been really interesting because I found that my mediumship has actually expanded. The more work I've done on myself, the better my mediumship has become. So it's, and when I first started studying mediumship, it's not that I wasn't like doing work on myself, but it was just more that I think I was so like excited about talking to spirits. It was, because you know what I mean? It's like, I can't even believe this is happening. Oh my God. And I was invested in training and I was traveling the world and I was building my business. And in the process of doing all those things, I realized that I really, was not taking a whole lot of time for self-care. And then the self-care became a priority. I'd say it was about 3.5 years ago. And that's been its own journey, and it's so rewarding. So I'm in that space. I'm starting to study, different like healing methodologies from different cultures, different, people of different walks of faith. It's been really interesting. I'm also really fascinated with the field of plant medicine. So, I mean, I talk about that a little bit, but I can't talk about it way too much, but I'll just kind of throw that in there, because I think that it's really going to, and it already has. Look at the indigenous peoples have been using it for thousands of years, but it's going to revolutionize the way that we treat a lot of different things. So I'm in that space a little bit too. Yeah.
The world's changing, we're changing, so many different avenues to go. I think with our intention with how we develop as a medium or within our spirituality, there's only room for so much at certain times, with how we're externally using our gifts and internally with how,
right,
we're paying attention to ourselves.
Well, and it's all a reflection of what's really going on internally. And, what I've started to really believe, and I say what I've started to believe, mind you, 5 years from now, I may have a different perspective. So I can only speak on what I am feeling today. But, the way that we encounter the spirit world, the way that we connect to the spirit world is a reflection of where we are within inside ourselves. So if we're personally triggered by certain people in the living, spirits are going to trigger us the same way on the other side, which can really get in the way of who we communicate with on the other side, with how we bring their messages through, with how we treat spirit people. And really, I've come to believe that the more compassion that we can have for ourselves and other people, even in the living, is in particular ourselves, the more compassion we can have for ourselves, the more compassion we can have for people on the other side. Because I don't know how it was for you, but for me, when I really started my journey working as a platform medium and doing a lot of readings, I played it so safe. Like I was connecting with, grandma had a heart attack, grandpa had cancer, whatever. It felt very safe. Now I wasn't really saying, and I wasn't even seeing like, oh, I see this man who was murdered, right? Like it was so safe. Because I had to become more comfortable with the energies, and I also had to be unafraid to encounter those energies. And I was limited. I would say, I can honestly say I was limited in how I was receiving information based on my own fears. And a lot of people don't really understand how mediumship works, right? Like, but I really believe that we can limit ourselves. And so the more comfortable that we become dealing with all of those different scenarios and things, like human beings they're messy. We're messy creatures. We do bad things sometimes. I mean, look at like, oh man, since I've been starting to do paranormal, I've encountered serial killers. I've encountered like all of this stuff, right? I don't know if I would have been ready to do that at the beginning of the journey. I think I would have been too judgmental, or I wouldn't have wanted to have those encounters, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much. There's things that I'm learning to be comfortable with. Exactly. You have to learn how to be comfortable with these different sides of who we are and presenting that information to others because there's so much responsibility behind it.
Huge. It's huge.
Yes, because I mean, you're basically shining the light on a case, or you're shining the light on somebody's life with their most precious child or husband or wife, or right. And it's just there's so much I don't think most people start with paranormal investigation. Some people do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like for me, it was, and I'm so glad that it didn't start that way for me and that I stepped into it later on my journey, because by the time that I stepped into doing paranormal investigation, I had more tools in my tool belt. Like I had went to the Arthur Findlay College. I'd gone several times over the course of 5 years. I'd studied a lot in the United States with teachers here. I've been to Lilydale, to all these different places. And you know, over the course of probably, and I'm still a student of mediumship, but I would say probably 7 or 8 years of really just taking every course that I could get my hands on. You know, I had learned about psychometry. I learned about automatic writing. I learned about, you know, auras and all of these other things that now remote viewing, so now when I go into a paranormal investigation, I have more tools in my tool belt. So I don't just walk in and just say, spirits, where are you? Which they're oftentimes there, but I can psychometrize the house. I can do a bunch of different things because I have the information, the tools in the tool belt, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, that's amazing how you have so many tools because how can I put it? I feel like there's so many different angles of energy to work with. Okay, so you can psychometrize the house. You could have a psychic link to someone who lives there. You could have residue energy, again, psychic. You could have a mediumship connection,
Right?
With the spirit that has passed. And it's like, if I would imagine, in a way, if you don't categorize the energy, it could be, well, which way is it coming from? And you have to have those tools really strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not always easy to discern between what's a psychic imprint and what's an active haunting. And, you know, over time, I've really learned how to better feel the subtleties between the energies. And the other thing that's super important, and I can't stress this enough, is, I mean, in the field of paranormal, a lot of people like to jump to, oh, it's a demon. I'm like, oh, good Lord. Like, no, like 99.999% of the time, it is not a demon. But if you are unaware of the difference between a spirit who's angry and has unfinished business and something that feels inhuman and demonic, then you're probably going to say demon when it's actually just a spirit who wants to have the story told, or a spirit who has unfinished business. And it's just it's an easy way to go to say demon. And it's like, and that's just not good for anyone, you know? So it's also about like understanding what we're working with energetically, and also how to address the spirit world. Because I tell my students now, like, look, when I encounter the presence of a spirit that feels angry, that people have, you know, told me this spirit is aggressive, okay, we need to address this and deal with it. But how do we talk to the spirit and in a way that can help them understand that they don't have to be this way? And I always tell my students, it's talk to them like you would talk to your friend. How would you talk to your friend? Or how would you talk to somebody who is coming to you for help? How would you address them? And it's with compassion, you know? So when I see people like yelling at like spirits, like, you know, come on, ghosts, come fight me. Like you have the shows where they're like, you know, yelling at the spirit, you know, antagonizing the spirit. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? You know, it's funny. So there's a huge responsibility to walking into any investigation as a medium and as a psychic.
The neutrality and, yes, the depth of human compassion, because I mean, there's all such sorts of things that have happened on Earth, and some people knew better, some people didn't know better, and you don't know who you're talking to. And so that's a question I want to ask. I'm going right in. So one of the things that I think that has made me go, I wonder about paranormal investigation, and I have to spend more time wrapping my head around it, is I'm aware of the, I guess, twistedness of human psychology.
Right.
So that doesn't equal the darkness of the potential universe. But yes, there's the twistedness of human psychology. And if you come across spirits that are not so nice, it could be because they were really not a very good person when they're alive. You know, we're talking about murderers or, people who manipulated people, things like that, right? If you were to get a mental link to them, and this is very few times has happened to me, I feel the manipulation in my head as they're talking to me. And so I go, wow, is this not a great person, or is this just really good evidence of who they were while they were here?
It's tricky. It's a good question, Kelly. Yeah, it's a good question. And so it can be both. It can be all of the above. And the other thing that I've really started to look at is, human beings. We as human beings, we have many different parts to us. I'm a psychic medium. I'm also a daughter. I'm also, a sister. I am somebody's colleague. I wear many masks in different situations. We all do. And there's something in the field of psychology called internal family systems. And so I just reference it because it's an interesting way to kind of look at how we encounter spirits. But basically in internal family systems, it addresses the different parts. So for example, when you're showing up to a certain situation, which part of you is showing up? If you're going into a trauma, which part of you is showing up? And can you bring in another part to address that part to create more balance in the psyche, right? So that's just kind of a very brief overview. But nonetheless, where I'm going with it is that if we believe that we as humans have many different parts, which I do, then when I'm going into a paranormal investigation, or when anybody is, we're encountering a part of that spirit. It's not the entirety of the spirit. And I believe that we're encountering oftentimes a traumatized part of that spirit that wants to be reintegrated with the whole. And so it gives us this opportunity to connect with this traumatized part of the spirit and help reintegrate it into the whole. And the reason I bring this up too is because if you read books like Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani, who, if you guys haven't read that book, it's amazing. She has a near-death experience. She comes back and talks about it. She's able to be in several different places simultaneously, her spirit. So I have to believe that when I'm encountering parts of these spirits, that there are other parts in other different places as well. And I'm encountering a part. And how I'm encountering the part of this spirit is directly a reflection of which part of me is showing up for that encounter. Which is why if we are triggered as mediums, if we haven't worked through our own crap, then which part is showing up, and that will directly influence how we engage the part of the spirit. So I'm going really deep into this, but it's just something to think about, right? Because in any given situation, we're co-creating the experience with spirits, with the people around us. We're showing up with our parts, right? So I don't know. It's just, I go on deep dives internally with these things because it's like, it's just hard to make sense of. I don't think any of us we can't. I'm sure we can't completely comprehend the other side until we get there. And we try very hard, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's like deep thoughts. So yeah.
I love it. I love it because everything you described coincidentally is my current philosophy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like I'll reference like, oh, we can be in, multiple places at the same. That's so cool. So I was like, wow. I'm right there with you. That's, I'm still collecting and I'm not in that world like you are. So I was like, this is so cool to hear it straight from you. Also, something that I want to ask about that, because, all right, now you have my brain going in so many different directions, because yes, I think that we are potentially providing healing to that environment, or that one part of the soul that is communicating with you. You know, maybe there's no healing to be had, maybe it's just evidence to be had, but you are interacting with one part of that person's soul. You know, for many lifetimes they are there. And again, that's a rabbit hole that we can go into if you want, but I'm gonna bring us back to the element of paranormal investigation for a moment. So when we are with some spirit that is, let's say, tricky, manipulative, and you can kind of feel yourself, you know, having doubts, because they'll put doubts in your head. They will like actually try to, how can I put it, bend how you see things and question things, right?
Right.
So then when that comes into play, yes, it's just a mirror of what's happening, and you have to really trust yourself in that moment, yes. But when you're away from the spirit and you have just time with yourself, how does it make you start to question reality?
Well, yeah, I mean, then again, it's like the more grounded you can be in yourself, the easier it is to navigate those spaces. And people that don't know me, or that like have maybe seen me on TV, you know, I think that they think that I'm always talking to spirits all day long, and I'm just walking around like, you know, just in the spirit world. And I'm not. I honestly spend more time grounded in this world than I do in the world of spirit, but that's intentional. It's not, I love being in the spirit world. Wow. But it can become escapism. It can become a spiritual bypass. It can become a lot of different things, and it can make you super ungrounded. So the more ungrounded that you are, the harder it is to navigate the investigations that you go into that are where you're dealing with a manipulative spirit. When you, or you know what I mean? So the investigation we did was that Steve Shippey and I did for Scream with Danny Rowling. Super manipulative spirit. It made me really uncomfortable, like very uncomfortable. And I didn't like that, because I tend to think that I'm like, maybe I'm less in control than I think I am, you know, but I tend to think that I have a pretty good grasp on what I'm experiencing. And in that particular situation, it was super uncomfortable. But I think because I make it a practice to be grounded in this reality, it was easier for me to overcome that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I see people go into investigations that don't have enough experience. They don't have any training. They just open themselves up with just no regard to the potential like mental stuff that could come after. And then they freak out. They can't come back to center, right? So it's something to think about. It's something for people to be cautious of. If you're a new medium and you want to do paranormal investigations, amazing, good. But I guess I'm training. You have to know grounding. You have to know boundaries. You have to know how to ground yourself afterwards, for sure.
And trust ourselves, because sometimes we need to feel things that the victims felt.
Right, right.
And we have to feel that vulnerability.
And it can be fragmenting. I mean, it really can be fragmenting for people, because then they can't discern between what's theirs and what's from the investigation. And then things become a roller coaster, and then they can't manage their emotions. And it's like, right. So I tell everybody, if you want to get into the field of psychic mediumship, get a mentor and study. You know, some people like to, and look, the spirit world is a great teacher. So I'm not saying that the spirit world can't teach you a lot of things. I'm not saying that, but there are some people who wear it as kind of a badge of honor. Like, I've never trained with anybody. I don't need anybody to train with. The spirit world taught me anything. It's like an ego thing, right? And it's like, okay, great. But like, for most of us, and I would say even for those people, having some training, is beneficial, right? So
it's different schools of thought. It's different perspectives. You know, sometimes we don't even have to agree with the perspective at hand. We go, oh, but you see it like that. And I understand now a different way. right? Or I understand the importance of that, even though I don't have curiosity in that per se.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so important, and it's just I do think paranormal investigation sometimes has more of a heaviness with it, and that's why you have to have more responsibility and understanding behind it. But again, that's just my perspective, just one perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd like to ask, like regarding is like with, again, we're really in the paranormal. There's been times where, let's say, I'm in touch with a case, right? But I go, this is so odd that I could be in the perspective of the individual who was there rather than what had happened.
Oh, right. Right.
Right. And this is when we get into the really paranormal stuff, like when you wonder if it's not a human, right? Because you're in someone's fear and you're in what they saw. There's that, or sometimes you just see really odd things and you're like, is that even possible?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just taking it in because, right, it's like there are many different ways that you can experience like what happens at a location. And one of the ways is to be looking through the eyes of a person who was there. You could be looking through the eyes of a killer. You could be looking through the eyes of a person who was an experiencer of the paranormal activity. I mean, there are so many different things that could be happening for sure. But when you embody those feelings and those emotions and that fear, it can feel like something inhuman. And that's where it's important to be able to sit in that space and not let fear take you over to the point where your ability to kind of navigate the field becomes affected, right? Because in that fear space, it's so easy to, and I've been afraid, like I've walked out of rooms, right? So I'm not exempt from these situations, but hindsight is 2020. And so it's like the more investigations that I do and the more I can sit in the fear and the spaces that feel really uncomfortable in a more neutral way as more of an objective observer, the better my investigations will be, right? Being an objective observer and neutral is super difficult, especially if you're dealing with a case that's, most cases are emotional, but when you've got like children that have been hurt and things like that, it is so difficult, and sometimes it can feel a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Technical is not the right word. I guess maybe it's like when you're going in as a neutral and an objective observer, it can feel like you're lacking empathy. It can feel like you're lacking emotion in places where you actually would be nice to use it. But we have to be able to compartmentalize those things to be good at what we do, so we don't become overtaken by emotion.
Yeah, it can feel a little cold sometimes, but right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have to make sure your temperature is right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so with all of this and, being grounded and just sizing up the situation, being neutral, is there, I guess, some experiences where you're like, wow, I've never seen that before, even though I'm bringing a form of logic into this. I'm sizing the situation up, but that's like very unusual, very, very unusual. And of all the cultures that you've, learned from with their different, I guess, spirits and philosophies, have you seen things manifest in a way where you're like, that's not quite human?
Yes, I have. And it's so fun to talk about this because I've been saying this a lot lately, especially at my live events where I do a Q&A, and people always ask about religion and all this stuff and how we receive the spirit worlds. And I am now a firm believer that we will experience the spirit world based on how we've been socialized. So if you grow up in a Judeo-Christian country, or Christianity is the dominant religion, and that's, what I mean, you're likely going to experience things attached to that belief system, right? because that's how you'll experience the other side. When I started traveling to Indonesia and spending a lot of time there, Indonesia is Muslim majority country. I worked with a lot of healers over there, and they believe in these creatures called jinn, which also exist in another realm, right? But I couldn't see them because I didn't have a reference to them. I didn't know. I'm like, what, you know? And so the more time I started spending over there, I would be tapping into things with my friends in Indonesia that were also mediums, and they would show me, they would say, look over here and tell me what you see. And because I just allowed myself to be open to all of the possibilities, I would start describing what I was seeing, and they're like, that's a jinn, and it's this type of jinn. Here's a picture of it. It was correct. Right. So prior to having even any understanding of like what jinn even were, I would not have been able to do that, if that makes sense. Right. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that at all. So there's something about it has a lot to do with what's in your awareness. So I tell people, if you want to be the best psychic medium you can be, you need to start studying other cultures, religions, understanding the potential, because there's so much potential. And it's really easy for us to become really kind of centered in our and believing that our belief system is the only way that the spirit world exists. And that's not correct. At least I don't believe that that's correct, you know?
Oh. And there's a lot of history behind some of these spirits or these energies. I've never seen a jinn. I've never, but I'm very curious about other, spirits. But they're referenced in the Quran. It's a cornerstone of belief for people.
Mm-hmm. It is, right. And in other religions, there are other types of entities and spirits, right? And so, I mean, I think it's super important for us to have an understanding of the different ways in which people interpret the spirit world, because we can be better mediums. We're more effective. We have a deeper understanding, and we don't limit ourselves. We don't limit ourselves to the potential of what's over there. I did an interview with my friend Cameron Pasha. I was doing a lot of Zoom interviews during COVID. And he practices Sufism, and Sufism is the mystical side of the Islamic religion. But he was telling a story, and I'm sharing this because I think it's interesting. So he was telling me the story about how there was a family where the family believed that the boy was possessed, and so the family is a Muslim family, and their son was possessed, and they didn't know what to do. This is somewhere in California. They didn't know what to do. And somebody said, well, you need to call a priest. Now, obviously priests are Catholic, right? So, but they're like, we need to help our son. So they called a priest. The priest comes in and is saying all of the prayers in Latin that they would say for exorcisms or whatever. And so the boy is not getting better. And I wish he were here to tell the story, because I'm probably not doing it very much justice. But, long story short, the entity that was in the boy said something like, your prayers aren't going to work because it's like you're not, I'm a jinn or something like that. So they wound up having to call somebody, an imam, to come in and do the correct prayers in Arabic, right? But it's just, it's interesting to me, because in our culture, right, we associate exorcisms with Catholics. Like the Catholics do the exorcisms most of the time. And the family first went to a Catholic instead of going to an imam, somebody in their own religion, to exorcise the spirit out of this child.
Wow.
Do you see what I mean? So it's like, so it's really, I mean, and if you were in an Islamic country, you would have made a different decision. It would have been first to go with the, the elder or the imam in the Islamic religion.
Right. You just bypass certain things because you're like, this is what we do. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, gosh, how did that story end?
Apparently the boy is fine. So, but this is like true stories. I wish you should have Cameron on your podcast. I'm going to give you his number. He's fascinating. He'd be good one for you.
I would love to dive into about all that as well. So absolutely. Okay. Yeah. I'm like Stories, give me all the stories. How do you believe as well in like earth spirits? You know, we're talking about different views of thought, and in Ireland, like a lot of people, they believe in fairies. I've never seen a fairy.
Yeah. No, I believe in all, like, I'm open to all of it. I'm open to elementals, fairies, whatever. I'm open to all of it, you know?
Has
Because
it ever been?
oh, no. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, has there ever been a case of an elemental that you've come across? But please go ahead.
Yes. No, I've seen elementals before, more than one occasion. I've seen them when we were filming Holzer Files. I saw elementals. I saw tree elementals. Like, it didn't make it into the episode. There was an episode that we filmed in season 2, and I was like, no, there's a tree elemental like this. It's because what had happened is the people who had built this house, they chopped down all of these trees like in the surrounding forest. I believe it was on, at the time, the land was still in Native American control, which, look, everything is Native American land. So let's just get that out of the way. But like, at the point being, it was like this protective tree spirit, this tree elemental. And the family had been having all of these troubles in the house. It like burned down. All these things just kept going wrong. And I was like, it's an elemental, it's a tree elemental. But because most people in our culture don't understand elementals or jinn or whatever, it didn't make the cut. And it's super frustrating, right? As somebody in the field who's coming in and saying, this is what I see. And it's like, well, nobody's going to understand what you're talking about, you know? So like, it's just, that's what we're working with sometimes, you know? So I wish that we, you know, there was a space, and there is, it's not like there isn't completely, it's not like the space is completely closed off, but it's like, I wish that there were a bigger space for things like that, where people could start learning more about elementals and jinn and whatever else, you know? Because a lot of times things are catered to what makes sense in our culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, where do we begin with that? Because it is consciousness, a different form of consciousness, elementals, jinn, spirit communication. It's different. And so, gosh, yeah, that I've never seen a class really cover that. You know?
Right.
It's just kind of like word of mouth, word of stories.
Yeah.
How do you, when you've connected to elementals, how do you feel that their energy is when you communicate? Is it very different? Is it very similar? How do you feel about it?
It's different. It's the energetica is different. It's super powerful. It's very wise. That's my experience. They can also be tricksters though too. So it's like, you know, it's super interesting. But yeah, it's something that I would like to spend a lot more time exploring. But again, I don't really, like you, know where's the class on elemental spirits. So maybe that's something that we both need to start looking into.
Yeah, you could just go out with a group and go, all right, we got everyone's back. Let's see what happens.
Right.
I guess when you're dealing with the unknown, and I guess if something's rather intense, what kind of protection do you bring in?
Ooh, protection. So I always say I don't walk into any case in fear, like coming from the place of fear. I believe that I believe in God, like 100% believe in a greater power. And I tend to think that I'm naturally protected. That could be naive, but this is the space that I like to live in. What do I do after an investigation? I think is even more important, about getting grounded. I'm a huge Epsom salt bath taker. Huge. It's almost every night I'm in the bathtub. So that to me is super grounding. But again, it's not just about what do I do after an investigation? It's what do I do on a daily basis to stay grounded and to do self-care. And that includes trying to eat healthy. It includes sleeping. It includes whatever mindfulness practices that like I might have or somebody else might have. Like all of these things that we do on a daily basis also prepare us for being able to manage the energies that we encounter when doing paranormal investigations and readings for people. So it's not just a one-off. It has to be daily practice.
Absolutely. I think we become hyper aware of what's not supposed to be. with us, and we're constantly like shedding, right? And constantly coming back to neutrality. And that's involves food, sleep, you know, how we cleanse ourselves. Yeah, like water is a huge thing. You know, I'm like shower, salts, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. And I also too, I have somebody that I go to do energy clearings on me. So I need to make a point to say that. We can't do it all by ourselves. We all need help, you know, on this journey. So I have people that do energy work on me. I get body work, things like that. Even, you know, with as long as I've been doing this, and even with all the experience that I have, I still need people to also help me, and that's okay. I'm not too proud to say, yes, please, like, clear this crap out of my energy field. I can't do it all by myself. So I think that, you know, I would encourage everybody to try to find people to work with them, even if it's acupuncture, things like that, to keep the energy moving through the system in the right way so it doesn't accumulate in areas of the body that can create pain. It can create emotional distress. Your chakras can become affected. I know a lot of mediums, including myself, thyroid issues, endocrine issues. It's like we got to be careful because we don't fully understand how the energy is affecting us. Yeah.
I think it takes a little bit of a stress load on the body. So yeah, it can affect the endocrines. Words, you know what I'm saying? The hormones and everything. Absolutely. Yeah, there's crossovers that I notice with individuals. I go, hey, like, how you doing? And I hear from them. How about too as well? I wanted to ask about the angelic realm, because they're a protective realm. They're a different type of energy too. Have you come across the angelic realm on paranormal occasions?
Yeah, no, I have. I've come across the angelic realm too, even in my automatic writing. They mean business. That's the thing, is like, good, angels are great, but they mean business. So when people are like, love, light, unicorns, and rainbows, I'm like, yes, with angels, but also they mean business, so they're like, if they're telling you something, it's serious, because right. So I've had that experience with them too. It's super interesting. But I've, through automatic writing, really have been able to really learn the energetic difference between like our loved ones on the other side, the angelic realm, spirit guides. It's you can feel the vibrational difference. It's really fascinating. And I think I could probably do it if I sat in meditation long enough. But for me, with my like ADD and the way that my brain works, it's like much easier for me to have a pen moving on paper and just to be automatic writing, because it just keeps me in the space longer. Yeah.
That focus is helpful. I hear you. Okay. I just, there's so much. Yeah. I mean, like, my brain is like, whoa, right. As you're talking, it's very exciting. I want to know then, the beginning of your story. We're at like the smack dab now, but I want to crank it, to the beginning of how you, first had experiences, and also then how you're like, I have to do this.
Yeah. Okay. So the first experience that I remember having, and I stress like remember, because it's not to say that I wasn't having things happening before. I think that I probably was, but it was at age 10. There was a girl who died in my elementary school in a tragic car accident. And after she died, I woke up and she was standing directly next to my bed, like like full body apparition. And I pulled the covers over my head and I pulled them back and she was still standing there. And that was terrifying for a 10-year-old. I didn't even know what was happening. I just knew that something happened. And I was like, what is going on? And, but then who do you talk to about that? I grew up in a religious family. And I didn't even understand what had happened, but I never forgot that moment. That was not a dream, right? Like, we know with visitation dreams, you don't forget it first thing. You remember every single thing about it. So, even after that, like, super intuitive kid, I could see when things are going to happen before they did. I read people very well. Also, I could feel the presence of what I now know spirits. Like, I could feel them close to my chest. I had a lot of, around second and third grade, a lot of different things happening. And then, and this is just part of my personal story. Like, at age 15, 16, like being in high school, super difficult because I'm an empath. So just not being able to really understand what's my emotions, what's somebody else's emotions, also being super psychic and having a connection to the spirit world, but having nowhere to go to even learn how to navigate any of that. And I didn't even have an understanding of it. So, you know, I was one of the cases where self-medication was like, wow, thank God. Like, you know, so I had to quit drinking very young. I started drinking kind of young, and then I quit very young because it was just, I was going nowhere good down that path. But I realized now, like I didn't understand my sensitivity. It was too much. And so it wasn't until I like stopped drinking, and, you know, thank you, God, at age 23, I'm so lucky that I could start to address my intuition. But it wasn't until like age 26, 25, 26 that I really started to dive into it more. Now, mind you, at age 19, I met my first mentor. Her name was Bonnie, and I was still drinking at the time. But she saw my ability in me, and she told me, she's like, you are psychic, you're a psychic. And she would try to sit with me and teach me things that I was just like, whatever, lady. And I was partying too much, you know? And, but we remained friends for a long time. She passed away in 2011. I think that's about right. I think it was 2000. Yes, 2011, she passed away. But she was in my life until then. And she was my first mentor. So, you know, that was really important. She was an important person in my life. But I'd say, like, when did I decide, like, this is what I'm going to do with my life? I'm going to make this a career. It didn't happen until my late 20s, when I knew, like, okay, I can't push this away. I was already studying. I was already doing readings for people. It was very small. But I think it's that I just like realized, like, this is what I need to do, what I want to do with my life. And from there, it just became a process of study. And then there's also a business aspect of it. A lot of people don't want to talk about the fact that this, right, it's a spiritual thing, but if you want to make a living doing it, you have to be able to navigate that space too. So there are all these different things that had to kind of fall into place, but it wasn't easy. And I worked my butt off. I mean, I spent 7 years living out of a suitcase doing platform mediumship. I mean, wow, you know? So for all of you, like, it was a lot. Like, I'm tired even thinking about it. I didn't realize how tired I was until COVID happened. And then I was forced to slow down, and I was like, I haven't slowed down in years, you know? But it was a process. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but it was definitely a process. And I make it a point to talk about, because people see people on TV and they think, like, oh, look, like, that must have been easy to get there. It's like, no, it was not easy to get there. It was a lot of work. Oh my gosh. And a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of, you know, not spending time with my loved ones, which, you know, I look back now, I'm like, wow, all of these years have gone by, and I was so hyper focused in my career that I forgot to my priorities were out of balance. And so now at 41, I'm like, ooh, time to get these priorities back in balance. Like, what am I looking to do now? And it's a different space to be in. And so I'm grateful for the perspective. Yeah.
No, I love tangents. Tangent away. Yeah, there's so much, and there's so many different hats you have to wear if you want to be a professional. You know, like, my gosh, I can only imagine. You know, because you're actually touring. That's a complete other angle, right? So you have to book shows. Like, I can only imagine, like, getting a manager, or, like, you know, publicity, right? It's just because people have to find you. You know, it's just like a job. Like, you have to make sure you're working.
Well, and I think too, like, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to say this, like, with booking shows and management and TV and all these things, right? It's really important for, like, those of us in the public eye to be constantly, like, really keeping ourselves in check about, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What's our relationship to the spirit world, to ourselves? Like, I am constantly keeping myself in check, and really, like, lately being like, what are my priorities, right? Because it's very easy to be like swept away in this world of TV and all the things. And that's it can be like, look, I am so grateful for all the work and I love my job, but it can be an unhealthy path if you don't know how to navigate it, because that's not what it's all about. Like when I first stepped into this work, it's like I was so in love with the spirit world, and like working with people, and I always have to bring myself back to like, why am I doing this? Why am I what are my intentions? And so anybody out there that's like interested in doing TV, amazing, or working professionally, but we're responsible for ourselves and to keep ourselves in check, for sure.
For sure. I think it's something to highlight because of course it's, if you're stepping out and being in the public as a representative for spirit, as a representative for quality work, for your industry, for your field, like that's something to be respected because it takes a lot of hard work. I would say, and this is why I'm highlighting it, if you're living a spiritual life and you're understanding about your energy constantly and you're evolving and you're helping others, that's already a tremendous load within itself. To additionally step up, not only with the business side, but also on a public platform. I just want to give you kudos. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it is. And it's like, but I love it. So it's like I go on these tangents, but at the end of the day, I love it. Like I love it so much. And that's the only reason I'm still doing it, because it's not easy. It's heavy. It can be all of the things, but it's super rewarding. People ask me sometimes, like, is being a psychic medium a gift or a curse? I'm like, it's a gift. I don't ever look at it as a curse, ever. I'm so grateful that I get to like spend my life doing what I love. And also part of our jobs too, Kelly, right, is to tell other people about open other people up to their own potential to experiencing the spirit world. And because everybody has the ability to have an experience. And I know you've heard me say this before. I say it at all my live events, but like I always say, everyone can play the piano. Not everybody's going to be a concert pianist, but it's like our jobs to open people up. And my friend Jennifer Schaefer, who is like a really good psychic medium too, she said once, and I love what she said, our jobs as mediums are done when nobody has to come see us anymore because everyone's having their own experience. And I was like, exactly.
I love Jennifer. She's such like great maternal energy.
Yeah.
And no, seriously, we are helping each other open up. And we are in a place within our lives, I think, at every moment, if we're conscious enough to go, well, okay, what's next? I'm doing it a different way. I'm seeing it a different way. And I believe, not everyone believes this, but I do believe we all have the potential to be mediums. Like, I just think like we're all born with the ability. It's just, again, about how curious you are in it, right? What do you want to do with it? And like mediumship is just, I think, an energy stream of consciousness with the spirit world. And, I believe that we come from spirit before we're in a human body, right? Yeah. So we're just connected to what was before us. So it has an eternal element. So there's something just of truth within that eternal. And that's why it's so special.
Exactly. We're all connected. There's really no separation. I mean, we experience separation to get, whatever lessons out that we have to get out in this space, but it's all connected. And I just want to say, I was like looking over to the side, like because people are writing some questions. So I was like, I hope I wasn't trying to like, I didn't want you to think I was like texting people. I was like, oh, I'm reading the chat. So I just want to say, to everybody who's been writing, hi, I'm sorry we haven't gotten to some of the questions. I saw some chat questions coming up. But somebody did. Yeah, does anybody have any questions?
There's some wonderful comments. Some people were talking about your artwork. They love your artwork.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Oh, someone asked about your dog.
Oh, Kiki. Yeah. So I had this side note. I rescued this Chihuahua a few years ago named Kiki from the Humane Society. They told me she was 5, but she was like 10. And she was like, oh my God, that dog was the love of my life. But she like bit everybody except me. So she was super vicious Chihuahua. I loved her though. She was great with me. But anyway, she was going blind and I didn't know what was going on. So she was like really biting a lot of people and I couldn't travel with her, and she was having some hard stuff. So I had to rehome her, but she is in the best home. She's so loved. She's completely blind now, but I still like pay her medical bills. I'm like her sponsor, you know. She's alive and doing as well as she could be for like a 13-year-old dog. She's great. So thank you for asking about Kiki. Yeah.
Aw, wow, I didn't even know about that. So people are asking about your classes too. I'm just taking all the questions
Yeah.
they said. In these classes, please share with what you have going on with that.
Yeah, so I teach a lot of mediumship nowadays. Most of my classes are held on Zoom, which I actually really love because I do 3-hour workshops, so usually on a Saturday or Sunday. But it's super fun because you can just be in the comfort of your own home, drinking coffee. I teach mediumship. I do psychometry. I do beginners. I do advanced. So if you look at my social media, it's on, I post all my classes on Facebook. I'm teaching another course on hold on, let me just pull this up. I don't even know what it is. It's May 9th, I think. No, sorry, Saturday, May 7th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's workshop for beginners, part 2. So a lot of people have taken part 1. This is part 2. You don't have to have taken part 1 to take part 2, but if you have experience. So I wouldn't like, if you've taken classes with me before, you can take part 2. But if you have no experience, wait until I do part 1 again.
Spirit's calling you to come, guys.
I know. So, I was like, what's going on? I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. So
right? It happens for a reason. Someone is also asking, Tom, how do you get the spirits not to talk when you need quiet time?
Boundaries. I'm like, close for business, come back later. I'm super tired. No, I can't do it. You know what I mean? It's like I have to really set boundaries. Although, I find, and I think other mediums have this experience too, when I'm in like a meditative state unintentionally. When I say that, I mean like when you're doing the dishes and you start to zone out and you don't mean to, they can come in at that spot too. Or whatever. So there are times where I can't fully control. I mean, I mostly have control, but in spaces like that, they can enter and I just have to tell them like, close your business, not today. Because it's super important. It's super important to have boundaries with the spirit world. Oh my gosh.
It is. Sometimes like when I'm cooking, I can feel someone around and I go, hi. And then like, that's about it. Like, it's like, you can laugh and think like, that's cool. But you're like, okay, I'm going to keep cooking. Right.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to be able to be grounded. Somebody just asked, what's the difference between psychic and mediumship? This is an excellent question. A lot of people don't know that there is a difference, right? So psychics, when somebody says I'm a psychic, what they are saying is I pick up on past, present, and future. If you went to somebody for a psychic reading, you should expect them to be able to talk about your past, your present, and your future. Mediums communicate with spirits in other realms, other spaces. So all mediums are psychic. Not all psychics have the same level of mediumistic ability. You can have somebody that's like a phenomenal psychic and not a great medium. It doesn't make one better than the other. Both are super useful. I think I'm a better medium than I am psychic personally. But then, I mean, I know people that are really skilled at both. Like, so it just depends. It just depends.
It just depends. It really does. I mean, I'll say it. I think I'm a better psychic than I'm a medium, but my mediumship builds my
Right.
If you're giving psychic readings, if you're bringing in the mediumistic link, it's going to help a lot. It needs to happen. So, yes, like they play off each other, but they're very separate, right? With what they can have done. How do you feel about so some psychics tune into the future? How do you feel about that free will versus, I guess?
I mean, it's tricky. It's tricky because, I mean, that psychics can nail things that happen in the future. Just absolutely nail it, but do I think people have free will? Yes. you know, it is a tough one. And when doing psychic readings, I'm always like, oof, when you're telling somebody about the future, you're also planting a seed. And then it's like, is the person creating that based on the seed that you just planted? But I want to tell you like a story that is in this. I don't even know if this was psychic or mediumistic, which is where like for me it's difficult, because when I'm doing live events, I'm communicating with spirits. And then I get information about somebody's future, and did it come from the spirit or is it psychic? You know, I tend to think it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. But the point being was that like I went to this guy in the audience and I was like, hey, you're gonna have another kid. And the guy was so pissed. He was like, whatever, lady, you're full of crap. I was like, oh geez, okay. And so I was like, ouch, you know, I guess I got that one wrong. And so then like, I'm not kidding, it was like a year and a half later, because I do events in the same cities. I've been doing them for years. So I go back to the same city, and the guy, he came up to me with his mom. He was at the event with his mom, and he's like, I just really want to apologize to you about how rude I was to you at the last time you were here, because you told me I was going to have another kid. And he's like, I thought you were full of crap because I literally had a vasectomy scheduled for the following week. But he said my wife was already pregnant and we just didn't know it yet. So like, right. But it's like, stuff like that is like, it's not even in his awareness, like really in his awareness. He's like, I'm getting a vasectomy. Like there's no way, you know? But he was already, they were already pregnant. So I don't know. There's stories like that, you know, I could tell a lot of stories like that, but it is tricky. And I'm very mindful with psychic readings. And I always tell my students, like, if you're going to tell somebody that you're seeing about their future, you better empower them and tell them that there's free will, nothing's set in stone, the future is fluid, because otherwise you're taking their power away. And that's totally inappropriate. And what if you're wrong? And you know, so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just, you know, my point of view. You really have to embrace being wrong. You really have to embrace being humble. Some teachers, they're like, you know, use languaging to build confidence, like, you know, structure where, you know, the person like is going to feel your confidence. And it's just like, it's their life. It's their future. Like, I have no problem apologizing or just saying like, hey, I feel this. I could be 100% wrong, but I feel this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And right? It's their future, 100%. I love how you say that. Okay, someone is asking as we come to a close. They're asking about mentorship opportunities.
Yes.
What a great question.
So, yes, I will be offering mentorship opportunities. I don't know when. This is what's so tricky about my schedule. It is so hard for me to lock things in that would be over a long period of time. During COVID, I did do a 6-month mentorship. I loved it. I had students with me for 6 months. It was so great. And I was going to continue it on for another 6 months, but then things happened with work and life, whatever. So I guess what I would say to that is just stay on top of like what I'm posting on Facebook for courses, because when I do another mentorship, I will be posting it on social media. And I am hoping to do another 6-month mentorship. I'm really hoping to. I just don't know when yet. Yeah.
Awesome. So people are saying thank you. They're saying hello from North Carolina. You were there for a little bit, right? Did you live there for a little bit, North Carolina?
No, Tennessee.
Oh yeah, the music station medium. That's right. Why was I thinking North Carolina? Okay, so Tennessee. You were in the area.
Yeah.
Oh, and one final question. Tom is asking Cindy, when are you doing a paranormal show? How do you feel about moving a spirit into the light? Oh, it's a little bit of a multifaceted question, but here we go.
Right. Yeah. So I never take responsibility for moving a spirit into the light. That's between the spirit and God, whatever you want to call the greater being, whatever your languaging is around that. The spirit soul has to be willing to move to the next level. And mind you, I say this, and this is where words are tricky because we don't have the right words in this dimension. Like time and space on the other side are not what they are here. So when I say level layer, I'm creating a space, whatever, it's just the best way I can do it. But they have to be willing. What we can do as mediums is communicate with them and try to help them by showing compassion and telling them there's a different way. But can you force a spirit to go to the next level or layer? And my belief is no, you cannot force it. You know, I've heard a lot of mediums say, I crossed that spirit over. And when mediums say that, you're actually not acknowledging the courage that it took the spirit to move on to, because they had to be willing to go there as well. So I'm of the belief that it is not my place to take responsibility for doing that. It's their choice. Yeah.
And I like the philosophy you're talking about with Anita Morjani of how we have, multiple lifetimes. It's like that part of that soul that's present. That's just one part of their life. There are many lifetimes.
Yeah.
So it's like a part of them is possibly somewhere else.
Right.
So we start thinking larger maybe than just what happened in one lifetime.
Yeah. It's important.
Who potentially we are talking to, right? Excellent. Okay, so there's more hellos and a lot of love. People are coming in to give love to Cindy, and I want to share
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Cindy,
thanks for having me, Kelly.
Where can people find you if they want to?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Medium Cindy Kaza, Instagram, Twitter. I'm pretty active on social media. It's where I post my my classes and my live events. My website is cindykaza.com. You can also find a list of all my live events there as well. I'm doing a lot of touring. Yes, I'll be in Reno. Michelle wrote, I'm looking forward to meeting you in Reno. Yes, I'm going to be doing a live event in Reno on April 29th. So there's still tickets available. And to see my full list of live events, cindykaza.com. So thanks, Kelly. It was awesome to be on your show.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I'm wishing you a fantastic rest of your week, to you and everyone listening. So please go with love, luck, light. Have an awesome day, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.